Hi, my name is Albert and today we have a new guest, Dr. Michael Benjamin Dibley. He's a human potential specialist, international speaker, founder of 360 Quantum, consultant and visionary. He has helped countless people live a life that is in alignment with their highest values and principles. His latest project, Become the Architect, is a part of a series that is dedicated to helping people build and rebuild lives that they actually want to live in. He serves clients worldwide and is widely sought out by high performers and achievers. His life purpose is dedicated to helping his clients thrive. He lives by the mantra, excellence is the code. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
It was almost 5 years when we shoot our last interview.
Yeah, exactly. Like we said before we started filming. 5 years or 5 minutes?
I think 5 years. It's like 5 years, like 5 minutes. Yeah, the time goes so fast.
Yeah, it does.
Dr. Dibley, your mantra is excellence is the code.
Mm-hmm.
How did you arrive at this philosophy and what does it mean to you in the context of unlocking human potential?
Oh, fantastic question. Basically, excellence as the code is something you can apply to every area of your life. It's doing something to the very best of your ability every time you do something. And how you do something is how you do everything. So basically that means no matter what you do throughout the day, from the very first thing you do, which is, waking up, to making your bed, to making your coffee or your tea, to taking care of and serving clients, or going to the gym, or whatever it is you do, in everything you do, 100% present, 100% focus, PTC, present time consciousness, and you do it to the very best of your ability. Everything you do. So excellence has to be the code.
You have worked with high performers and achievers worldwide. What is the one universal trait you have noticed in people who tap into the full power of their mind?
Oh, that's another great question. The big part and the big takeaway, what I've observed with almost 20 years of working, one-on-one with clients all over the world, as you said, is the one thing that they all have in common, the high achievers and the high performance people, corporate athletes, artists, musicians, actors, mothers, fathers, anybody that's really living life at their highest potential. Number one, it's a choice that they make every day, every week, every month, every year. So it's a conscious thing. It's not just something that happens. And they have a plan, and they hold themselves accountable, and they have a strong sense of discipline, and they're not relying on any outside, force to impart that discipline upon them. They're self-disciplined. So they're goal-oriented people, and they understand what I call the 360 formula for success, and I call it the 360 quantum formula for life. And it's thought plus vision plus action equals results. So many people have many thoughts, many people have many visions, many people take many actions, but if you don't combine them, then you're not going to get a result. So the high achiever is someone that can combine thought, vision, and action, and they will always get a result. The low achiever is someone who only applies one or two of those and not three of those. So TVA equals R. Thought, vision, action equals result.
It's your formula that you're using for your life.
Yeah, that's the formula. That's the 360 quantum formula for life success. And if you analyze and study, very successful people in whatever realm, I'm not just talking in business, but in the arts, in the sciences, in family life, in sports, they're combining thought, vision, action, and they're doing it every day, not just once in a while. It's consistent action, consistent thought, consistent vision. Consistency is another huge, factor in any type of success.
Everything starts with a small milestone with your mind.
Yeah, well, like we say, crawl, walk, run. You repeat the process, because life, the evolutionary cycle of biological life for humans is in 7. So it's in 7-year cycles. So every cycle has its crawl, walk, run phase, because as you know, if you think back to like when you were a kid, you crawled first, you didn't just run, so you were crawling, then you were walking, and then you were running. And then if you think about like your podcast that you're doing now, you weren't always doing this podcast. Like 5 years ago, I don't know,
We've
I don't
been
know.
interviewing, yeah,
How long have you been doing the podcast?
maybe for half of a year.
Yeah, half a year. So then, now you're better at it, I assume, right? So
Yeah, indeed,
crawl,
yeah.
walk, run, crawl,
Yeah,
walk, run.
yeah.
So whatever you're doing, and this is to everybody listening and watching from wherever you're at, if you want to accomplish something, just start where you're at. So start where you're at, crawl, walk, run.
With all tools that you have
Yeah,
nearby
yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
I think one of the biggest hindrances to people is they're always saying, "Hey, when this and that, and this is in order, and when if, and it's like, no, start now. Start right now. This second, start right now. Because it doesn't cost anything to take a positive action. And most people think, oh, when I have this, or when I have this, and then if I have this, and if, and if, and if, and
Yeah,
it's,
there's
and
if,
then
with many if.
yeah,
It's always start with the if,
yes,
and then you cannot do this.
and that also leads to victimhood, and it also leads to paralysis of analysis. So you get so overwhelmed with perfectionism that you never start. So done is better than perfect. Like we mentioned before we started filming, it's like, okay, let's roll. Done's better than perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get the message out there. And
something than nothing in some way.
Yeah. Done is better than perfect.
Can you share a personal story of a moment in your life when you realized the mind's potential to shape reality?
Yeah, I can think about in my own life.
Yeah.
I can think about my whole life that way. I mean, I grew up in the natural healthcare realm, and so that was always like a example in front of me. But if I think about, for example, was it 7 years ago, my partner at the time and I decided to separate, and that wasn't really easy. And so that, as anybody who's gone through a separation or a divorce, it sometimes can be a little difficult, challenging. And what you have to do is you have to start to focus on what you have control over and what you can actually do. And then, of course, back to that formula. I've always had that formula: thought, vision, action equals results. And so if you want something to grow, if you want something positive to grow, you focus on growth. You focus on solutions. And that's what back to your kind of original question about high achievers and high performers and people that I've taken care of and still take care of, is they can always reframe something. So no matter what happens to them, they can take that as fuel, reframe it, and use it to their advantage. And so every experience in your life, you can do that. Whatever you perceive as a setback, I assure you, it's only a setback because you haven't transformed the energy yet. Once you transform the energy and you use it as fuel, I call it quantum fuel, because anger, frustration, stuff like this is a lot of fuel. It's just potential energy. And anger is just another way of saying I don't have an answer. That's all that is. Frustration and anger. So once you take action, and once you combine it with the thought and the vision, you're going to get a great result. And so you consistently do that. So back to your question, I think I've been applying that for my whole life, because there was a time where I didn't have a doctorate. There was a time that I didn't have 15, 20 offices around the world. There was a time before I had kids. So my whole life is a process of applying thought, vision, action equaling a result. So whatever I want to do, like this new project I'm working on, Become the Architect, that's a new project.
And also the new book. You're talking about the book.
Yeah, the new book, Become the Architect. So there's another book, there's several books I've been working on, but the one I've been talking about lately on certain interviews and podcasts and what people are really curious about is this Become the Architect book.
Can you elaborate about this book a bit more?
Yeah.
What is it about? And
yeah, well, it goes back to observance and what I've observed with working with people for almost 2 decades. And what I've understood and what I've helped people achieve. And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time, money, and energy thinking about their home or their homes, and thinking about the mechanism and the parts of their life and not the vitalism. And I think a lot of people need to look at what they want to build in their life and how they become the architect. And I think a lot of people can build a house, or at least hire someone to build a house. But
you mean a physical house, yeah?
Yeah, I mean the physical house. But what about the house of your life that is your life? And like I always say, your first house is your body. So is your body and your mind.
So you need to care about the body first, then you can think about...
Yeah.
Okay, what you need to do with your body? You need to train, you need to go for running, or you just need to have a gym, or...
Yeah, I think you need to find those things physically, what you really love to do. And of course, do them. One of the things of the many things, I love to ski, so I do that as much as I can with my kids and my family, my wife.
That's why you live in Norway.
That's one of the reasons. No, my beautiful wife's Norwegian. My kids are Norwegian and American, so they hold both passports. And I have permanent residency in Norway, and of course, I'm a citizen of the United States of America proudly. And so, yeah, we're all global citizens. My wife as well. So,
Cosmopolite, how we say, yeah, the people of the world.
yeah, yeah. We always say that the world is our home, and every country's a room in the house. So that's how we feel about it.
A
We,
room in
we're
the house. Yeah, very nice.
we're
saying.
proud. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're proud to be American. We're
Eh,
proud to be Norwegian. We're proud of who we are, and mostly we're proud of being universal citizens. I mean, that's the most thing, because the most thing we're proud about as far as citizenship goes, because I think those highly aware people around the planet, around the firmament, understand that, we put a bunch of names everywhere, called it countries, and called it and added a lot of meaning to that. When in reality, that view of Earth, it's like you don't see any lines, you know and so so a lot of the borders are really arbitrary in many ways, and you see that in the world today with all these wars and all these conflicts and all these issues. It's like, you guys, what are we on about here? We have plenty of resources. We've just mismanaged the show here.
I've been talking sometimes with astronauts that are looking for the planet, and the planet is so small when you're looking for from the top. It says
Yeah,
the planet is so small.
yeah,
And
it's a matter of perspective. It's a
Yeah.
matter of perspective, and the people that we serve and the people that we are really good friends with are all international travelers. you know and so, everybody that I think the ultimate education is travel. I think my children will learn more in a year traveling than they could in any institution, no matter
yeah,
no
yeah.
matter even if it was Harvard. I mean, everything has its time and place, of course, but I think the amount of adaptability that one has is also a direct reflection of the amount of health they have too. So the more adaptable someone is, usually the more healthy they are,
Mhm.
because that's actually what health is if you really think about it. And if you think about what we call death, it's just when your body doesn't adapt anymore. It's when your body's done. It's when the physical body says, "Okay, finito. I can't adapt anymore to this environment." But if you're already adapting actively, then you're going to have a much better shot of aging healthy in a healthy way. So if you increase your adaptability, whether it's through like Wim Hof method, or whether it's through sauna, sweating, ice bath, meditation, whatever.
Everything starts with the mind. Yeah, exactly like Wim Hof saying.
Yeah.
We have a book here somewhere of the Wim
Yeah, I
Hof.
thought
by
I
the way,
saw
yeah.
over here in the library. So yeah, you got to keep your adaptability high. And when you keep your adaptability high, you keep your health high.
How would you define the power of the mind, and why do you think so many people underestimate it?
Oh, how would I define the power of the mind? Well, like I always say, the longest journey that you're going to take is from here to here, from one ear to the other. So once you master that real estate, that's going to be always the ultimate journey, because even when you travel, you're still with your mind. Everything goes through your mind and your previous experiences and whatever filters you may have from, your childhood, etc. So the mind is just a vehicle. The mind is really just this conduit between you and the universe, and it's receiving signals and it's also sending signals. So it's like an antenna, and that's why it's so important to have your mind clear. And I think that's why so many people don't today, because quite frankly, I think most people are overloaded. If you think about, like, just for example, take images, for example, and there's been lots of studies on this too. But if you look at how many images people see today in 2025, as opposed to 1925 or 1825 or 1725.
You mean because they are traveling and see the screen? You mean because that's why you see?
Right. I mean, somebody's flipping through their phone or their computer, and they're seeing, thousands of images in 1 hour, in one day.
But is it bad or good?
No, but you think about it, and that's a good question, because I can see with my kids, for example, like I didn't have a phone or a cell phone until I was,
Same thing.
I
25.
think,
maybe. Yeah.
maybe.
25, 30. Maybe.
Oh, you were later.
yeah. Same. No. Yeah. Same years. I think.
Oh, yeah. You're 83, born in 83.
Yeah.
Okay, I was March 14th.
Yeah.
Yeah, so same as Einstein.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
yeah.
you were born July
30. Yeah.
3rd. Okay, so another great birthday. So we got a computer, I think, when I was 12 years old. I got a cell phone when I was like 19, after I graduated American high school, private Catholic school. And now my kids.
But we had the phones with there was no screen. in
No,
yeah.
I had
It was not
my first one was
smartphone. It was not
Yeah.
smartphone. It was just a normal phone
Oh
with you
man,
can dial up with the sends messages.
yeah, exactly. I mean, remember my first phone was like a Motorola flip phone. I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
My first telephone was Motorola as well. Yeah.
Motorola silver flip phone. It had a little antenna that
Yeah,
you pull
yeah,
out,
yeah.
and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And
Coolest.
and then back then, at least in America, I don't know how it was in Russia, in Moscow. But
Yeah, it was. I was in Turkey at the time, so
Oh,
I
you're in
remember.
Turkey.
Yeah, I've been studying there. So
Oh,
I
okay,
remember
okay,
the first telephone I bought there,
Yeah.
it was Motorola. Yes, and I
yeah.
keep it under the pillow. So but anyway, it was stolen. Yeah, but,
You know, the coolest thing back in the day was like, what's your ringtone?
yeah.
You know,
But it was Nokia. I think it was
Yeah.
Nokia that made the ringtone.
ringtones.
Ericsson,
Yeah,
Nokia.
Sony Ericsson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one of those too, the original Nokias.
Yeah, they were expensive ones. So
Yeah, I had
afterwards,
I had a Nokia, and then of course when iPhone came out, I think it was 2005 if I'm not mistaken, and I got an iPhone in graduate school, and then I had a Mac. That was my first computer. I was 12. So the point is, I mean, back to your question was like I look at my kid, Sophia Gelsomina, who's 11, and then Atlas Benjamin, who's about to turn 9. I cannot believe how fast they are on the iOS. They are so quick on because they have they have iPhone,
yeah,
they have iPad, and they have iMac.
But
So
the kids already have iPads in the schools.
Yeah, that's true.
And-
My kids go to Waldorf school. In Norway, it's called Rudolf Steiner School, because that was the founder, Rudolf Steiner, from Germany and in Austria. And so in that school, that's one of the good things about that type of education is there's no technology.
Oh, really?
No, you're not allowed.
Until which form? Until 11?
Oh, I
Oh,
don't
until
know.
10,
I don't know. I mean, our oldest is 11, but what they do is there's a basket, and all the phones go in the basket at the beginning of the day, and they get the phones back at the end of the day. So there's absolutely no thought of the phone throughout the day. There's no usage of the phone. There's no technology.
Yeah. During the day, yes.
During the day.
Yeah.
And then what's great is now, my kids being, multinational, and multilingual, they can call their cousins in America. They can call their cousins in Norway. They can speak to their aunts and uncles. They can speak to their grandparents in both countries. So they can FaceTime. So what I'm saying is they're so much faster than we were at that age. Like their age right now, they've mastered the iOS. Like like they're showing me stuff, which is great because they're like, "Hey, Daddy, do you know how to black out your screen?" Which I love. So they showed me how to like black out your screen, which decreases your screen time.
Oh.
So they showed me that, and I said, "How do you know this?" "Oh, it's YouTube." So, so they're just, so back to your question, is it good? Is it bad? I think just like anything, it's a balance. I mean, it's kind of like, if you give someone $1 billion, some people think about building weapons, and some people think about feeding people. So it depends who the technology is in the hands of, and what the intention is, right?
Yeah.
And how you use it. I mean, if you use it to manipulate or liberate, that's a good question, right?
Yeah,
Are you using the phone and the tablet and all, and like this podcast and these 5 cameras or 6 cameras here? It's like, are we going to use it to blast out a really positive message or a negative message? Well, it's a positive message, and we hope to basically influence as many people as possible in a positive way
to give a positive energy.
exactly,
to the world, yeah.
and remind people of their power and their innate intelligence, and that they're totally equipped and they have everything they need when they're born. And I think what happened with the world is it got so chaotic and so busy. And there's so much noise. There's so much noise in the world. And like my wife always says, which I absolutely love, and she's in the art world and made the park here, Eckeberg Sculpture Park, which is top 5 in the world now, among other things. And she's a highly intelligent human being, and I think very highly of her. And she says, "I didn't come here to listen to noise." And I absolutely love that, And I think that's what I see most of the time when I go to watch film now, when I go out into society in general. I see a lot of noise. I see a lot of busyness. I said this on another podcast, on another interview. I think we have a lot more connections, but I think they're a lot more shallow. I think back, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the connections were deeper. Maybe we didn't have as many connections, but they were deeper. So I'd like to get back to that. I'd like to get back to being present, back to the beginning part of the interview.
Like to be carpe diem, to be seize the moment of being in the place.
Being present, man. Just being present, Like one of the first questions you asked, you said, "What's the difference with high achievers?" And I said they're present, And I've said this many times before on many other podcasts and interviews, like, the greatest artist is not eating a cheeseburger while he or she is painting. They're present. Enzo Ferrari is not, trying to design, lawnmowers. He's focused on designing cars, or at least was. So my point is focus. Being present and focused is such an important element to living a quantum life.
Let's talk about becoming the architect of your life.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Your latest project, Become the Architect,
Yeah.
is inspiring. What does it mean to be the architect of your own life, and where should someone start?
Well, thank you. I
We
appreciate
actually have been talking a bit about
Yeah,
this. But
Yeah. We danced around it.
Yeah.
Well, it came through, really. It came through observation, working with people for almost 2 decades and seeing so many and observing so many people and kind of like the difference of, somebody who really loves their life and is really on fire for their life and who's really moving forward and always looking forward. And of course, being present at the same time. So that's a beautiful kind of symbiosis. And then those type of people, and then you look at people who can never seem to get shit together. So, and it's because they're focused on all the wrong things. They're trying to fix everything on the outside rather than starting on the inside. And so becoming the architect of your life, it starts with the logical process of self-care and understanding your value system, understanding your personality type, understanding how and where you were born.
Understanding the country, where you live.
Yeah, everything. Understanding your environment. Is it good for you? Does it fit? Is it the right fit? You wouldn't, you look very nice in this white outfit, but you probably, tried it on. But if it was 8 times smaller or 8 times bigger, it might not be so nice. So you got to find what fits you. And so many people are so focused on what fits physically rather than mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and health wise. So becoming the architects is really kind of a expose of how you become the architect, which you start with yourself. You start with your self-care. You start with, when were you born? What does that mean? Where were you born? What does that mean?
Is there a meaning? But you can born anywhere in the world.
Yeah, of course. But for example, in the South, if you're born, I'm half Italian, so I'm half Pugliese.
You speak Italian.
Sì.
Sì.
Così, non c'è male.
Chin chin.
Sì, chin chin,
Yeah.
salute. But if you're born in the south of Italy, then there's a high chance that you're probably either growing olives or growing grapes. You're growing something, right? So it's a little different than Siberia. So where you're born has a big influence on who you are. Like, where I was born had a big influence on my life, as I think everyone. And so does that fit you? Does that not fit you? Who are you really? All these sorts of things. Introspection, awareness, self-awareness. So it always starts with self-awareness. And so I think a lot of people, back to what we were talking about earlier before we took a little break, is, it starts with that. It starts with self-awareness. Who am I? What are my values? And of course, that can change over time from those 7-year cycles and develop and grow. But if you're just kind of reacting to your life all the time, if you're always in defense instead of offense, that's not living, that's existing. There's a really big difference. I want to make that distinction so everybody understands that. It's a huge difference between living and existing, right? There's a huge, huge difference. Existing is just surviving. Living is thriving.
In the real world, sometimes it's difficult to live. You just need to survive in some way.
Well, I think most people are in that, and that's called sympathetic overdrive. That's the sympathetic nervous system kicking on. And if you can go from, survival to thrival, I think if you asked most people, even if they were in like super survival mode, and say, do you like that? And they would probably say no. But it's all they know. So it becomes their repetitive pattern. We are what we repetitively do, and it becomes their habit. So once it becomes their habit, then they get locked into a pattern. Until somebody else comes along or they wake up or they kind of do a mirror check, what I would call a quantum mirror check, and they go, oh, okay, maybe I can do something different, because if you want to have an extraordinary life, you better get ready to do extraordinary things. You can't have an extraordinary life and do normal effort. It doesn't work. If you want extraordinary, you're going to have to put in extraordinary. You know what I mean? If you want normal, put in normal. I mean, to each his own. I have no judgment, but, depends what you want to do with your life. Depends what your vision is. If you believe, is that your belief system? Not saying you, but is your belief system that life is just survival? Well, then life will just be survival. So you're back to your brain power. Your brain's like the blueprint, because your brain is the blueprint, and your actions are basically going to build whatever the blueprint says. So, I've said many, many times before, but Usain Bolt wanted to be the fastest guy in the world. Well, there's a reason he looks like the fastest guy in the world, That wasn't necessarily my ambition. I never thought I want to be the fastest man in the world. That wasn't I was always going to be, help as many people as I could, live lives of abundance. Was my and is my first intention. Officially, when people ask, I'm a consultant. And that's really what I am. I consult with people and I help them manage their energy better.
Like psychology or something.
Yeah, there's a psychological element, but it's more spiritually based as well, and focused on their values, starting with them. I mean, most people will do a personality test to start with, even before I see someone, because most people haven't even done that. They don't even
personal test on the paper.
Personality test. There's lots of different ones. I use certain ones. I use different metrics. But first, I want to get a pure, clean assessment of who that person is. Maybe we'll do 1 or 2 or 3 of those, and so they can start to see. Because, again, I mean, I can't help anybody if they don't know what they need to fix or what they need to change. So self-awareness. So maybe people who are listening to this, have never done a personality test, have never done an astrological test, has never really looked at where they're born, how they're born, which hemisphere, which coordinates. And you might want to start there to bring yourself some awareness. And then when you do that, you'll be kind of shocked, I'm sure. If you've never done it before, you say, oh my gosh, because so much of it lines up with what you're good at and what you're challenged with and things like this. So the first part of the cure, like I always say, the first part of the cure, which I'm not curing anything, people cure themselves, the body heals itself, but is the awareness. So 50% of it is awareness. The other 50% is action. What you do about it, what you do with that awareness.
To be, 2 steps, to be aware and then action.
Yeah, 50% awareness, like you can't fix something if you're not aware of it, right? Right? So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and you can't, like we say in America or in English, you say you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink. Yeah. You can say, hey, it's right over there. That's a better life over there. But if someone doesn't even look up from the ground, how the hell are they going to get over there? So there has to be a desire. There has to be a want. There has to be an initiative from the person inside. You can't force someone to do something. So a lot of people are very okay with living very okay lives. And that's very okay for them. Yeah, but if you want to live an extraordinary life,
they can live in the forest and they just
yeah.
But that's much more than enough for the yogis or for the people who do the yoga.
And I have those clients too, and I love them, and they're living an extraordinary life. They're totally present. That's what they wanted to do. A lot of those people came from affluence and said, it's not for me. Look at Henry David Thoreau, wrote the book Walden, one of our favorite authors in our family. He was from affluence, and he said, Dad, I'm going to take a year off from the family business. And I'm going to go live in the forest, and I'm going to make a book. I'm going to write a book and just observe what life really is without all these other influences. And I think that's noble. I think that's absolutely noble, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. So there's nothing less noble about living in the forest, with no electricity. I'm the oldest of 6, but one of my brothers, Matthew David, he lived in the forest. He was like a modern-day Henry David Thoreau. He lived in Vermont, in the forest, in the mountains, with no running water and no electricity.
I think it's too much for me, but in general,
I have both. I have the luxury of both. I created a life where I have both. I bought a place up in Canada off grid many years ago, and I grew up, just across the lake from that exact place that we actually purchased in 2012. But my grandfather, Robert Boger, he bought the property, and every summer we'd be up there, totally off grid. And I just loved it. And so I still go up there every summer. So I have both. And I take care of a lot of Amish people, and they are totally off the grid. And I think being off the grid is really important. I think being off the grid and having access to that is a high level of freedom. Because if you're somebody who's always on the grid and addicted to everything that the grid comes with, then you're going to be reliant on somebody in something other than yourself. What being off the grid teaches you is that you not only can survive, but you can actually thrive. I don't know. I've talked to so many people about this, as far as like people who have camped or hiked, and that's one great thing about where we're at now in Norway is our mountain place up in Geilo. You can hike and you can camp and you can ski and snowshoe and all that stuff. But I tell you what, eating meals outside and eating meals like for us up at our cabin, up in Canada, everything tastes better. So I think in some ways the so-called modern society is a hoax. I think there's a lot of great things about it, but if we look at it from a human health perspective, it's not doing well. If you look at human health metrics, it's not doing well. There's such a high level of obesity and laziness and apathy that exists. I mean, think about how many electric cars are in Norway right now. You shut the grid down, they're done. You're totally relying on the grid. Good luck. What about if you have an EMP? Electromagnetic impulse. You're done. Finito. What if you go to like what China has, social credit? Oh, you didn't say good things about the government this week. We're going to shut you down. Only 200 kilometers you can drive this week. So I'm not, I think it's, I don't think everything in the modern society is so modern. I think it's more, should be called modern slavery in many ways.
In some way, yeah, exactly. If you, for example,
Yeah.
the electricity will be shut down, then everything stops. So-
Well, they're warning about that. That's not even like some sort of conspiracy theory. Like you've heard it from the NATO chief. You've heard it from, especially all over Europe, all this hysteria. Get ready for this, get ready for that, get ready. It's like they're telling you what they were going to do.
Yesterday, I've been on a SHIC conference, and I think there was a guy, a Minister of Defense.
Hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, there
Yeah.
was a policy chief of the police, and they was talking about that thing, what's going to happen if something, like if it's going to be war, and they say,
Mhm.
if it's going to be a war, the people will continue to live how they lived before. But that will be problem with the stuff like electricity, food, or something. But they need to be just prepared because
Mhm.
that it is possible that it will happen. But the city will live how it was living before.
Yeah.
So, but there will be shortage, as you told. There will be no electricity, for example, in some way, or
Yeah, but the big difference is 100 years ago, like our ancestors were a lot tougher.
yeah,
We literally have the weakest people that have ever lived on planet Earth alive today. Look around at the so-called leadership, for example, around Europe, minus Meloni, minus the head of Italy right now. She's great, Hungary, great, conservative leadership. But you look at them and you go, these people couldn't survive 7 days without electricity. Back during the whole Corona scam, the whole scamdemic, plandemic. I mean, you had a bunch of people who were obese telling people how to be healthy. They opened the bars and they opened the place to get liquor and alcohol, and they closed down the health clubs. They closed down the gyms. It wasn't nothing to do with health. So that's the issue. That's the whole issue. Is 120 years ago, people were stronger in many, many ways. They were used to, having a cabin or having no electricity or walking or riding their bicycle. Now it's like, the new god of the modern society is convenience. And if we look from a human health metric, it's gone too far. People have become, now it's like it's luxury sickness.
yeah, luxury.
Luxury sickness,
All the time when I'm sitting and having dinner and looking at the window, I'm just thinking we are the kings of our life. The kings we have a food,
Mhm.
it's warm, and outside is cold. We have a vehicle like a horse that we had before.
Right.
And we can buy everything. Like we are really living like a kings in this era.
Yeah, in many, many ways. Absolutely. 100% agree with you. I mean, look at the quality of life in, the 15th century. It was a lot of other diseases that were related to hygiene and lack of running water. So that's why every society, if you look around society, every major capital is on water. I mean, look at one of the most important waterways in the world, not so far from where you're from, is the Bosphorus. The Bosphorus is a fantastic, amazing study in human, achievements. The Byzantines and the Ottomans and the world trade and the Roman Empire and things of this nature. It's, there's a couple waterways. Look at the most important waterways in the world. Even today, it's still the same as the Bosphorus and the Panama Canal and the Suez. Those are the three most important points in geopolitics.
Yeah, that's why they're talking about
100%.
right now in the geopolitics right now.
Yeah. So, some things change and some things never change. Principles never change. It's like, I think it was Abraham Lincoln said, in matters of fashion, go with the flow. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. And I think that's the problem with people today is I don't think there's they're too busy, they're too overloaded, so they lack principles, right? And so they go with the flow when they should be a rock. Principles, be like a rock. Matters of fashion, go with the flow.
Yes, it is. But in sometimes you need to be flexible, like in politics in somewhere. So you need to be a rock in some way. But in
politics, as we say, politics is just show business for ugly people. That's all politics is. Politics is literally telling people what they want to hear and then doing the complete opposite. If politics worked, we'd have a much better world. We've had more politics and more bureaucracy than ever today in 2025. And we still have a lot of starving kids, and we have a lot of child trafficking, and we have a lot of, horrible, horrible things still happening that could be changed literally tomorrow. We have the resources. Like, there's no shortage of anything. We're just totally mismanaging all the resources. That's the issue. We have plenty. Have you ever been on a plane? I mean, you fly. I fly back and forth to America all the time over the, Iceland, the south part of Iceland, Greenland. And it's like, there's a lot of land, man.
Yeah, especially when you're flying above the Greenland. Yeah,
I mean, even Norway, it's 5 million people. There's a lot of land for 5 million people. We're just mismanaging it. I would like to see things better managed instead of some bureaucracy. And Elon's great about that, too. Elon says, I'm sick of the virtue signaling. And that's all I've seen for since I've been alive, but it's gotten worse in the last 20 years, is a lot of virtue signaling. Like, for example, the electric car people. I think that's the most hilarious thing ever, speaking of Elon. It's like, oh, I'm an environmentalist. Well, have you seen the supply chain on lithium-ion batteries? It's insane. It's exact opposite of environmentalism. It's environmental.
Yeah, the people who saying about that electric car is much more.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's
absolutely.
Yeah. It's absolutely horrible. It's environmentally horrible. Yeah. We could talk about that on another podcast. But I'm just talking about what's like a real solution versus rhetoric, or what politicians would call rhetoric, and lip service to people, and just telling people something they want to hear and then doing the opposite. It's like, okay, you're an environmentalist. Okay, so what do you do? So what are you doing to help the environment? And also, I love the quote of like, the earth doesn't need your help. It just needs no interference. Just it's like the earth. The earth is going to be fine. Trust me. Humans need to get their heads on straight.
But even the oil that we take from the ground, we need it in some way. But the earth is also in need of it. But we cannot do anything without the oil. So that's why we need to.
Yeah, it's been a great thing. It's funny how demonized it's been, the petroleum-based economy. It's been completely demonized, and it, in some ways it's true, but at the same time, it's like, well, you should also talk about the benefits. It's the most efficient thing that we've found so far. You know how inefficient battery-powered vehicles are? Like if you look and you take it to scale, and you take it to like commercial vehicles, you take it to semi-trucks and stuff like that. Yeah, okay. Well, it's advertised, but they can't really travel that long, and then you have to charge them for who knows how many hours to get 1 hour of service out of them. It's not you don't have to be a brain surgeon to understand that it's pretty inefficient. So anyway, that's a whole other thing, is you always have to look at the full picture. With whatever you're talking about, whatever you're thinking about, you have to look at the whole picture. There's always two sides, and oftentimes
but
more
sometimes
than two.
It's not very easy to see the whole picture. Some people are just cannot do that.
Well, some people are brainwashed. You're right. Yeah. And I would call that brainwash, because we have
brainwashed. Yeah, probably.
Brainwashed, because we have two hemispheres. We have a right and a left lobe.
Yeah.
Cerebral lobe, like we have in the world. We have east and west. And so the smarties of the world, the intelligent people, know how to look at the whole picture.
But how to make them to look at the whole picture? What do you think?
Well, I don't think you could make people do anything, but you could offer different solutions. It's the funny thing is, Albert, is you've traveled around the world for many years, as I have, and as my family has, and I've never had a problem with anybody. But if I look at the news, let's call it, I don't even want to call it the news, call it the agenda. That's what it should be called. Stop calling it the news. It's called the agenda, someone else's agenda. You look on the news and the sky's falling down, everybody hates each other, there's war everywhere. Never had a problem. Never had a problem with anybody. You give respect, you get respect. It's really simple.
The same thing I heard about the people who are traveling a lot, and they're saying there's like, I don't remember exactly what the country was, but I think it was somewhere in the Middle East. And on the one border, they say you should be very careful when you go to this land.
Right.
because there's very dangerous people.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, they say the same thing about
course.
the other people, but they were so kind to him.
Yeah, see?
So, and that is
The importance
exactly,
the importance of travel, yet again. Yeah, it transcends borders. Back to what we were saying earlier in the conversation. It transcends borders. It's educational, keeps you highly adaptable, and also you no longer buy the agenda. The agenda is division. I mean, a lot of money's made on division, you know, and unity is you know, something that's talked about but somehow never achieved. You know, at least in the political sphere. So it's interesting. If you look at all political platforms, whether you agree or disagree, they're basically built on division. Somebody's wrong, someone's right, you know. And if you look at it and you get rid of all that and you say, okay, well, human beings have very basic needs: food, clothing, and shelter.
Well,
And most
and sex.
Yeah,
Exactly.
if you're vertical, if you're active, yes. So intimacy is important. But as far as like basic human needs, it's food, clothing, and shelter. You know, and most people want that and desire that. You know, and once those needs are met, there's really not a great need to go out and, you know, do bad things and create, you know, crime. If you look at crime, you know, if you look at people committing crimes, they're usually part of the demographic that don't have resources. There's a direct correlation between resources and crime, lack of resources and crime. And there's a direct correlation between people who are doing very well and health. So then we can start to get, once we start to get away the noise, back to the noise, once we get the noise out and we look at things for what they are and use common sense, things are really, really solvable, actually. All the problems of the world are very solvable. They're not actually big problems. They're as big as the news makes them. You know, go hang out with the Amish for a summer like I do. You know, those people are dialed in. When the lights go off, we talked about the grid earlier. If they ever shut the grid off, or if there's some sort of terrorist threat or whatever, CIA or Mossad or whoever's playing around that day, and they agree to shut this down or that down to create scarcity and, of course, manipulate the markets this way or that way, then of course. But then you go hang out with the Amish, and they wouldn't notice any of this stuff. Their vegetables are growing. They know when the sun is going to come. They know when it's going to rain. You know, they got 8, 10, 12.
Exactly. They don't care about the news, TV, or anything.
No, and they're not sick either. There's no autism in the Amish community. They don't vaccinate. They don't watch TV. They don't have electricity, and they don't have any autism. There's a book called Why the Amish Don't Have Autism. And you should read that book, and your listeners should have a look at that. But it's quite interesting. The more natural we are, back to Henry David Thoreau and Walden, the more natural we are, also the more healthy we are. And as the world has become busier and industrialized, people, to keep up with that, have been more supplemented with pharmaceuticals and drugs and unnatural substances, like all these stupid energy drinks all over the place now, which are, you know, known to cause all kinds of issues. And people are trying to keep up with the pace of machines and AI and whatever else is the new fad. And they're burning.
It's a new story about the
AI, yeah. And so they're burning their kidneys out. They're burning their liver out. They're burning their brain out. And then they become the bot themselves, you know, and then they just become a human doing instead of a human being. So I think repose is really important. If you're alive during this time, I think you have to have a cabin or have access to nature. You don't necessarily have to have a cabin, but go for a hike, you know, reconnect with nature. Beautiful. You know, in Japan, it's like a form of therapy called forest bathing. But in Norway, that's one of the greatest things about Norway. That's probably like one of the selling points of Norway is, you know, there's more nature than people. It's really quiet.
I've just made one video about that walk and dream. About that you're walking in the forest and you can dream and make your dreams come true, actually. And it can happen, especially when you're living in Norway with that nature, that you can do this and you just go around in the forest. You can think and your dreams will come true. Just to walk and just think about it alone. Just
beautiful.
For 1 hour.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, that's laying the intention, you know. That's becoming the architect. You're setting the intention, you know. All this stuff, this podcast room, you know, this building that we're in is probably 1890, 1895. All this stuff that we see that is man-made in the world today is not more than 100, 200, 300, maybe 400 years old. So everything comes from a thought. Everything comes from a vision.
I usually say that everything has a system in some way.
Of course. I mean, look at this beautiful arch. I mean, this is like the room we're in right now. They probably can't see it, but it's like a bunker. Yeah. And you see the arch right there, the Roman arch. You know, in the middle is called the navicular, and that's Latin for keystone. In the middle of the foot, there's a bone. It's called what? Navicular, the keystone, and that's how you make arches. That's why there's an arch, because it holds so much weight. And if you look at how things were built during that period, you know, late 19th century, it's like they're built to last. You've been to Germany?
Yeah.
You've been to Berlin?
Yeah.
You've been to Hamburg?
Yeah.
Yeah, you go to Germantown. I mean, those things are built to last. Look at the walls.
For many years.
Oh, I mean, they're built to last. You know, German cars built to last. German tools built to last.
Yeah.
You know, they're really good with machines. Nice beard, by the way. Nice beard.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Last time I saw you, didn't have a beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. You also had a bit beard.
Yeah, my beard was bad. I just trimmed mine in New York last week.
It was bigger. But
I was gonna say mine was more like yours. Mine was like this.
Yeah.
But I trim it back. The thing is, my wife, they kind of tell you what you need. You know, they say I like this.
Yeah.
So this is the length that she likes.
Yeah. So,
So-
the same thing that.
Cohabitation.
But not zero. But
No.
to have something. Yeah.
Oh, I think I've had facial hair forever. Since puberty. You know, just feels natural.
Yeah.
Also, if you look at like ancients, like philosophers and stuff like that.
Yeah. You feel natural. Like
I think it's very manly. You know, it's very masculine.
you masculine.
You're a man.
Yeah.
Beards.
That's
Beards. Beards unite.
I'm agree with that. Yeah, you feel somewhat different. You know, if you don't have it, nobody ask or talk about this. But when you have it, everyone, but mostly, talk about it and they say something.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
it's
true.
How do you blend the practical and the visionary in your approach to human potential? Is it more science, intuition, or a mix of both?
Man, that's a great question. Well, it's three things. It's science, right? So you have to understand the body. You have to understand how it works, anatomy, physiology, emotions, immune system. You have to understand the body, anatomy, physiology. And then there's the philosophy, right? So the philosophy of the body being able to heal itself and working from a, major premise of the body is a self-healing, self-organizing mechanism, right? And given that it has no interference, it's going to do really well. It's going to be really healthy. If there's interference, mental, physical, emotional trauma, then of course it's not going to function at 100%. And then, there's art. So there's science, philosophy, and art. And the art is is your practice, is how you take care of people. And the art is how you solve problems. And there's different kinds of artists in the world, right? There's sculptors, there's painters, there's digital, there's media art. There's lots of different types of art. So those are the three elements when I approach human potential, is from a scientific standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, and an artistic standpoint. So those three areas is what we look at. And every single person is different. There's not 1-2 persons that are the exact same. You might see similarities or patterns to certain cultures or certain, proclivities in certain areas of the world that people have similarities and different kind of traits. But every person is an individual, and that's how we look at people, and that's how we take care of people. Because, like I always say, the fingerprint. There's a reason you have a fingerprint. It's yours.
Only one.
It's only one, baby.
Even if you cut it, you'll have fingerprint.
Right. So only one. It's only one. So you have to custom, bespoke service is what we go for. We treat everyone as an individual. And I think that's the most important thing, because there's a lot of groupthink in today's society. And I think if you want to make a group stronger, you empower the individuals, So you empower individuals is how you get stronger groups and how you get stronger societies. Not the other way around. Not empowering groups. You empower individuals, and that makes the group and the whole stronger eventually. And I think today's society is catering to the lowest denominator instead of the highest denominator. So I think that's what's happened, and that's why we have so much lack of common sense in modern society, especially like with healthcare and human potential care. If I operate out of a very holistic and a very natural approach, And so I start with the premise that the body's intelligent. And I start with the premise that the body is the ultimate doctor. The innate intelligence of the body is what runs the body. And I need to work with that. Not against that, not above that, not below that, but with that. And with that approach, we get great results.
So you have everything in one pocket, I would say.
Yeah, we call that 360 quantum.
360, everything in one,
360 quantum.
all around.
That's right. Holistic.
What's what?
In Norwegian, you say helhetlig.
Helhetlig.
Helhetlig means we look at the whole picture. And in Norwegian, they say, alt henger sammen. So everything is working together, So you have to look at the whole picture.
Same as the world. To understand something, you need to see the world picture.
100%. 100%.
So the same thing you're using in your practices.
Yeah, I mean, imagine
you see the whole. Yeah. You see the 360, and then you just go deeper.
Yes.
You find the problems or issues that need to be solved.
Yeah, I mean, some people too, it's very interesting, the misconception that some people have about other people too. They think, oh, just because someone has, a beautiful home and a beautiful car and a beautiful wife and stuff, that they don't have struggle, that they don't have challenge. They have just as much challenge as anybody else, maybe more. It's just how they deal with it.
The same as we're talking about Elon Musk. He says, I would never would like to be on my place, anyone. Because I have so much things to do. And if I have so money, it doesn't mean that I'm happy in some way.
No, Elon's a genius. I mean, Elon's a genius.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking that the guy that he has everything and he says to everyone, I would not recommend you to be me.
No, most people couldn't handle it. Most people couldn't handle it. I mean, he went to Wharton. He's from South Africa. Funny thing about Elon, which we haven't talked about, is Elon's family on his mother's side, they're Haldemans. The surname Haldeman. And I think it was his uncle. So his mother's brother was the head of the South African Chiropractic Association.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dr. Scott Haldeman. Very, very prominent, well-known chiropractor. And so Elon grew up with chiropractic. And Elon grew up with natural health care. And that's part of why he's so smart. Because his family understood natural health. Especially his mother, Mae Musk, who was actually a Haldeman. My technique is 360 quantum. And, I come from one of the world's biggest chiropractic families. And I've been rated one of the best chiropractors in the world many times over. And then I took it to the next level, and I've created my own technique, in my own work, in my own energetic work, and it's called 360 Quantum. So it's in a league of its own, and it's definitely not chiropractic, but it has the chiropractic philosophy and the chiropractic principles, but the application's different. And, chiropractic is an amazing, amazing healing art, and absolutely love chiropractic. Grew up with chiropractors. One of my doctorates is in chiropractic, but my work is human potential care. Okay.
What's the difference between massage and chiropracticity?
Okay, chiropractic. So the difference between chiropractic, let's start at the beginning. So Dr. D.D. Palmer started with chiropractic 1895, and Dr. Samuel Weed was the one who named it. Chiropractic is from Greece. It's a Greek word. It means to do by hand. That's what it means. Now, massage, you do by hand too. But massage is focused on what? The muscles.
Muscles, yeah.
Right. Chiropractic is focused on the central nervous system, Okay. And
so that's the main difference.
That's the main difference. And then, so it all hangs on. Like, it works together, both are very important. But to be a central nervous system specialist is absolutely superior to everything, because if you're focused on the central nervous system, that's the system that runs the body. And that's how we experience our world, our environment. It's how the universe goes through us. Some people, not so much. Like I always say, like when I work with people, we got to take the world out of your system and get the universe flowing through here. It's not the universe making you sick. It's the world. It's the busyness. It's the quote unquote the matrix. It's the stress overload, that sort of thing. But 1895 is when it happened, and that's also when osteopathy was founded too. Dr. A.T. Still with osteopathy, and osteopathy was more like focused on the blood. The
vessels and
arterial system, and it got absorbed by medicine, and but a lot of beautiful healing arts in the world today, and no matter what healing art you call it or whatever it is, we always say that the natural way is always superior.
You talk about thriving as a life purpose.
Yeah.
How does aligning with our highest values connect to the mind's ability to thrive?
Well, they're synonymous. If you think about yourself, whatever you're curious about, whatever you inside of you, whether it's from your consciousness or subconsciousness, you want to learn. And when you want to learn, you'll become good at it.
Yeah.
So, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you're interested in, you attack.
Let's say 10,000 hours, this theory.
That's right. 10,000 hours is the baseline for mastery. So I think first you have to have the curiosity, Something has to hit you, whether it's conscious or subconscious, come across your consciousness and interest you. And as long as you're interested in something, you can learn it really easily. But if you're ever feeling the feeling of someone else wanting you to learn it and you're not like, you know, like when I was young, my dad wanted me to play American baseball. So I was in what we call Little League. So I was playing baseball. He loved baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't for me. I have nothing against baseball. I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, you know, as much as I can be. I'm not really into organized sports in general, but anyway, it just wasn't my thing. And it was his thing. So you have to find your thing. And I think back to the mindset and the human potential, it's like, it has to be in alignment with your values. If you're doing something that's not in alignment with your values, how's that going to go? You know, in other words, if you're doing something you don't want to do, right, and you can't stand it, and it doesn't resonate with you, then what's your level of mastery going to be? It's going to be pretty low. But if you're really curious and you want to learn and you want to become better and you have a hunger and a desire, that's going to be an amazing journey. That's going to be an amazing experience. So the Japanese call it kaizen.
Kaizen, kaizen, yeah. It's one of the theory, and also in the
warriors.
The warriors,
samurai.
Yeah, the samurai.
The samurai.
Kaizen. They're also using the time, kaizen time, just when you need to think before you start doing something.
Being present.
Yeah,
and in the definition, like as translated to English from Japanese, is kaizen means constant, never-ending improvement. And that's really all this whole thing's about.
Learn. And
human potential, I mean, the core is like kaizen. It's synonymous, you know. Because you don't want to compete with anything or anyone else. You want to compete with yourself. You want to just be better than you were yesterday, right? You want to improve on yourself every day. That's why we get days and weeks and months and years, if we're lucky, you know, to become better, not worse.
Yeah,
become
and
better at something.
That's the important thing. If you do the thing that you like, you can do it and make it better every day. But if you are not eager or you are not interested in the thing that you are, that was pressed by someone else, if you're working on the work that you don't like,
you have to find what
resonates.
So
you just stopped working, and then you just enjoy not to do this. But if you like the things that you like, you just continue until you die.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know David Goggins, right?
David Goggins,
Marine.
Lady Gaga.
Yeah, kind of like Lady Gaga. No, Lady Gaga's, you know, done very well in the entertainment industry, worked her butt off there, and is a great singer, but great voice. But no, David Goggins it's hilarious. Everybody's gonna think we're thinking David Goggins. David Goggins, Lady Gaga. No, David Goggins is a Marine, and he's one of the most famous Navy SEALs. And you got to check him out if you don't know. But David Goggins, you know, is amazing. He's became like super famous in the last 5-10 years, and talking about discipline and doing a lot of things you don't like. So he's like running and doing a ruck through the night, 30 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, like doing all these amazing physical feats, like transcending what he actually likes to find the infinite power within him. So sometimes you got to do things you don't like too in order to become better. It's like going to the gym at 5 a.m. Not everybody loves to do that. You ask, you know, all these guys who do that, they say, "Hey, do you love that?" No, but it's what they're committed to get the result that they want. So that's back to what we said earlier in the podcast. We talk about if you want an uncommon life or an extraordinary life, you better be uncommon and you better be able to work extraordinary and not just normal. If you want normal, you'll get normal. You want extraordinary, you'll get extraordinary. It's very simple. It's actually very simple. But the desire and the hunger and the curiosity has to be there. And then that will pull you through whatever's difficult, whatever temporary pain there may be.
The more you want, the more you get in some way.
Yes, exactly. And then you have to recalibrate because, of course, you know, you can only wear one pair of pants at a time, you know. So there's that.
You can drive only one car in the garage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could have like 15 cars, but I can only drive one at a time. So there's also the balance of all that. And then, like I said earlier in the podcast, you know, going off grid, going into nature, I think is like infinitely important to recalibrate your system. Because I think why so many people are so sick today, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, is because they're not running their race. They're running someone else's race. They're living in someone else's architecture, right? The building that they live in is not their building. They didn't design it. The house they live in, they didn't design it. Someone else's. They might have renovated it, but it's still not theirs.
So the main message to be architect of your life.
The main message, take control of your life. Go to the driver's seat. Get out of the passenger side and get in the driver's seat. Start driving your life, you know, and then watch what happens. You know, if you feel like you're not in the driver's seat of your life, you're not going to feel great. You're going to feel like a passenger.
Okay, how you can manage to see it more practical? Let's say I'm an ordinary guy that I'm working on the like from 7 to 3.
Yeah.
Guy, what is the
And that guy wants to do something about that. Wants to
he-
escape this.
Yeah, because
He wants
doesn't.
to escape the
Yeah, he wants
grind
to
of
escape, and he just wants
9 to 5.
to sit to sit in a wheel, to sit in front of his in his seat, and he just want to make the life of his yeah.
Well, then he has to make a change. So, you know, he has to, back.
because sometimes you need to pay the bills. Everyday bills, and then you
survival,
need to, survival, because you're in a survival mode. If you stop working, then you cannot pay the bills. The house will be taken, and all of the stuff.
Maybe sometimes
it's easy to talk, but it's difficult to implement this stuff.
No, that's a good point. But sometimes that might be a good thing. I mean, look at the Amish. They have very little financial resources, as opposed to, like, for example, a westernized person, but they're infinitely wealthy. The Amish loan money to each other. They don't go to the bank. When the Amish build a house, the whole community comes together to build a house, right?
Do they have money?
Oh, yeah. They use money for sure. They use money, but there's different kind of money. They have regular money, like, regular currencies, but they also, the gold, silver. They have vegetables. They trade. They have animals. They trade. And not to mention, it's a community that with shared values, so they help each other. But very different than the westernized would happen.
But they don't have credit cards.
Maybe some of them do. I think they're called Reformed Amish. Maybe some of them do, but most don't. No, most of them don't. But either way, they're around a community of people with shared values. So it's a lot easier for them to support each other because they all support each other. In the Western world, we focus on the differences rather than what we have in common. And that's the issue. If you look at the Spanish or the Mexican community in America and the hardworking Mexicans in the United States of America, a lot of those guys come over from Mexico, and then they join their family and their friends, and they live in one house, and they take one house, and they all live together. They all cook together. They all go and pour money in the same kind of focus and pot. Then they get another house and another house and another house and another house, and all of a sudden, they become a multimillionaire through investing through that method. Meaning they work together. So if you there's nothing you can do all alone. If you want to achieve great things, you cannot do that all alone. No one has. No one will. If you want mediocrity, you can be alone all you want. And that's why so many people have mediocrity, because they're isolated and they don't connect with other people who have their shared values. There's a lot of people who sit at home every day and watch the world go by and wish that they had a community. Well, if they go out there and they really look for it, they'll find it. There's always somebody. I mean, there's 7.5 billion people in the world now.
But the same, I agree. And back to the community stuff, like even here in Norway, a lot of people who come from different countries, Pakistan, India, Turkey.
Right.
And I'm not sure about that countries, but I also know some families that they are making the house. For example, 5 brothers, they make one house for the older one or the one who is married, and then they're making all together. They're making house to another one. But if you be alone here, for example, in Norwegian society that we live in, everyone is stand alone. They just can work with the bank, and that's it. But if you work with that comes from tradition, they make it all together. Because imagine if 5 people are working, they even can make a dream house that's impossible to one person that you can make it.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic point, Albert. Totally agree. It's something I've observed as well. I'm half Italian, half British, born and raised in America. Grew up in a very strong community. So anything's possible in that community. Nobody ever said, "Oh, you can't do that." The only thing my parents ever said was, "You can have that, you can do that, but you're gonna have to work hard to do that." Okay, that's fine. But you're absolutely 100% right. When you have a community such as current Norwegian society, it wasn't always like that. Norwegian society used to be peasants, and I mean that in a noble way. Same with southern Italy.
Yeah, because of the mountains.
Farming.
Farming. And
you have to work together. That's actually where modern day insurance comes from. It comes from farming. Because the guys got together as farmers and they said, okay, well, I didn't get a big yield this year. You got a big yield. You got a big yield. I didn't get anything. Well, we got to support this guy because next year that could be us. So that's where modern day insurance comes together, right? So they got together, pooled their resources every year so they could support each other so they wouldn't, so they could survive. And if you look throughout history of people doing great things, it's always been in groups. I should say strong communities, strong groups, strong communities with shared values and shared philosophies. So before you diagnose yourself with, depression and anxiety and whatever else you're busy, labeling yourself with, maybe you want to see and check the community you're in or not in and find one that you want to be in. and start thriving.
On this nice, good note and advice from Michael, we are coming to a closing up and some big picture ideas. And looking ahead, where do you see the future of human potential heading as we learn more about the mind?
It's just expanding. It's more popular than ever. It's really, if you think about human existence, no matter what anybody who's listening to this, no matter what they do for a living, no matter where they're at, your whole life is tied into your potential. And when you're happiest and when you're thriving is when you're in alignment with that potential. When your mind, your body, and your spirit are in alignment and you're doing what you need to be doing, you're doing the work, you're doing the service that you should be doing, then you are living out your human potential. And whatever you're doing, and I want to be very clear about this because we start and end the same way, right? It seems that way, at least on this podcast, is like whatever you're doing, be 100% present with what you're doing. Everything you need is right under your nose. Start right now, right where you're at.
If you could leave our listeners with one bold idea or challenge to embrace the power of their mind, what would it be?
I would challenge them to wake up 100% and go for it and become the architect of their life. Own what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your advice and for your speech today on our podcast.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to see you, man. So keep shining brightly and we'll catch you soon. And
maybe after 5 years.
Maybe, hopefully shorter. Take care.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you on our next podcast very soon.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Awesome. That was nice. Good job.